The day a homeowners association president strutted onto my porch with demolition papers was the day she accidentally handed me the match to burn her whole little kingdom down. She thought she was here to erase a worthless shack from her perfect view, but her entire luxury neighborhood was sitting on land my family had owned since 1872. And the second I realized that I stopped being the broke, divorced guy everyone ignored and became the problem she couldn't buy her way out of. 2 weeks earlier, I was still in my cramped Columbus apartment, living off microwave burritos and overdue invoices, fixing electrical problems for people who talked to me like I was part of the furniture. 6 months post-divorce, broke as hell, 47 years old, and honestly wondering if life just didn't have anything left for me. My ex-wife got the house, I got the debt, and my contracting business was hanging on by a thread so thin it felt like a joke. Then my Uncle Ezra died. Barely knew the man. Family black sheep lived alone out in the woods, sent Christmas cards with no return address, and these weird little notes like, "Keep what's ours." Last time I saw him I was 12, and he was arguing with my dad about some old property dispute, calling everybody stubborn fools and warning them about paperwork thieves. So when his lawyer called and said I'd inherited a property in rural Madison County, I pictured a handful of useless acres and a tax bill I couldn't afford. The drive took 3 hours through back roads that made my pickup groan on every hill, the kind of roads where your cell signal dies and you start thinking about how easy it would be to disappear if you wanted to. When I finally found the place, my stomach dropped there. It was the cabin, and cabin is being generous. A sagging metal roof windows held together with duct tape porch steps that looked like they'd collapse if you sneezed. It looked like a horror movie set, like something teenagers dare each other to walk into at night. But when I stepped out of the truck, the silence hit me like a blessing. No traffic, no neighbors screaming through paper-thin walls, no sirens, no drama. Just wind whispering through pine needles and the distant sound of creek water over stones. The air was so clean, it made my lungs ache like my body forgot what real oxygen felt like. Inside wasn't much better. Dust sheets on furniture, mouse droppings, warped floorboards, the smell of abandonment mixed with old wood smoke. But the bones were solid. Hand-hewn oak beams, fieldstone foundation. The kind of craftsmanship you don't see anymore because the men who built it are gone, and so is the pride they had in doing things right. On the kitchen table was Ezra's final letter, written in that sharp, angry handwriting. "Sawyer, don't let them steal what's rightfully ours. Check the trunk. The truth's been waiting long enough. E.B." I spent the first week making the place livable, rewiring dangerous outlets, patching the roof, clearing out enough junk to sleep without inhaling a dust storm. The nearest neighbors were supposedly some fancy development called Millbrook Estates, but the forest was thick enough I couldn't see a thing. Perfect. I thought maybe I could finally breathe, maybe I could finally think straight. That's when Cordelia Ashworth came calling. I was on my porch replacing rotted boards hammer in hand when I heard clicking high heels on gravel. Not boots, not sneakers, not anything that belonged in the woods. Designer heels. The sound alone probably cost more than my monthly food budget. A gleaming white Tesla rolled up my driveway like it owned the place, and out stepped a woman in her mid-50s with helmet blonde hair that defied physics. A white blazer so pristine it practically glowed pearls around her neck, and a leather portfolio thick as a phone book. Her perfume hit me like a floral assault clashing with the clean pine air like it had a personal vendetta. She looked around at my cabin like it offended her on a spiritual level. Then she walked right up onto my porch like she'd done it 1,000 times. "Excuse me," she said, voice sharp and brittle like breaking glass. "Are you the new owner of this structure?" I wiped sawdust off my hands and tried not to laugh at the way she said structure like it was a disease. "Sawyer Blackwood," I said. "Yeah. Inherited it from my uncle." Her nose wrinkled. "Cordelia Ashworth," she said, and she handed me a business card with raised lettering on stock thick enough to cut bread. "President of the Millbrook Estates Homeowners Association." Our community maintains standards that protect property values. We manage 300-plus homes and a multi-million-dollar annual budget." She said it like she expected me to clap. I glanced around at the trees, the birds, the fact that her neighborhood was invisible from where we stood. "Good for you," I said. That shark smile appeared. "This cabin violates multiple aesthetic guidelines. The condition, the obvious maintenance failures. Frankly, it's an eyesore that reflects poorly on our entire area." "Lady, I said your neighborhood is nowhere near my property line. Nevertheless," she said, voice dropping colder, "you have 30 days to remove this disgusting structure, or we'll have the county condemn it. If you fail to comply, we will arrange demolition and send you the bill." She actually leaned in when she said it, like she wanted to see me flinch. I didn't, but my chest got tight. Because I know that tone. I've heard it from lawyers, from bank reps, from people with money who speak like the world is their personal customer service desk. And in that moment, standing there with my hammer and my sawdust and my busted porch, I felt small, like maybe the universe was laughing at me. Like I came out here to start over, and the first thing that happens is some rich suburban queen shows up to stomp on my neck. She turned to leave like the conversation was over, like my life was just another item on her HOA agenda. And as she walked past the open door, she glanced inside, right at the old trunk sitting against the wall, then dismissed it with a flick of her eyes like everything in my world was junk. The second her Tesla tires crunched away down my driveway, I went inside and opened that trunk. The smell of old paper and pipe tobacco hit me, and I swear the air felt heavier, like I'd cracked open a tomb. At first it looked like junk maps, receipts, folders, yellowed documents. Then I found it. A faded deed from 1872 railroad land grant my family name on it, in ink that had survived wars and weather and time. Survey maps from different decades, all showing the same boundaries. Tax receipts dating back generations, every payment signed by a Blackwood. My hands started shaking. I didn't understand it all yet, but I understood enough to feel something crack open in my chest, something that had been dead since my divorce. Because if these papers were real, then Cordelia Ashworth had just threatened me on land she didn't own. She'd threatened me on land her precious neighborhood might not even have the right to sit on. 3 days later, she proved she wasn't just a loud HOA Karen, she had connections. A White County truck rolled up my driveway, and out stepped a building inspector named Dale Thornberry, clipboard clutched like a shield, sweat already on his forehead, even though the morning was cool. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, not looking me in the eye, "we received reports of multiple violations." He handed me a stack of papers, thick enough to stop a bullet. 14 separate code violations. Unpermitted electrical work, 4,000. Non-compliant septic, 12,000. Structural hazards, 18,000. Foundation issues, roofing violations. Illegal occupancy of substandard dwelling. Total $47,000. 60 days to fix everything or face county seizure. I stood there holding that stack, and the rage came up so fast it made me dizzy. "This is horse shit," I snapped. "I'm literally fixing this place. I'm wiring it by the book. I'm in the middle of a damn forest." Dale swallowed. "I just follow up on complaints," he said. "Someone reports a problem, I have to investigate." "And who reported it?" His face flushed. "Can't discuss that." We both knew. He left, and when his truck disappeared down the driveway, I sat on my sagging porch steps with those papers in my lap, staring at numbers that could crush me. And for the first time since I arrived out here, the silence didn't feel like a blessing. It felt like isolation, like I'd driven 3 hours into nowhere to die slowly under paperwork and fines. I could feel that old hopelessness creeping in, the same helpless fury I felt watching divorce lawyers pick my life clean, the same feeling that the rich always win because they don't even have to fight fair. I remember thinking really clearly, maybe Cordelia's right. Maybe I'm just a washed-up guy clinging to a rotten cabin because I've got nothing else. I remember staring at the tree line and imagining how easy it would be to just leave. Sell whatever I could, crawl back to the city, take whatever scraps life threw at me, stop pretending I could start over at 47. And then, like Ezra was standing right behind me, I remembered his letter. Don't let them steal what's rightfully ours. I went back inside, spread those papers across the kitchen table, and I read everything by lamplight until my eyes burned. That's when I found the folder labeled HOA Correspondence. Letters from 1987 all the way to 2019. Millbrook Estates demanding Ezra cease interfering. Threats about frivolous claims. Ezra's replies getting shorter and angrier over time, but he never signed anything, never surrendered. And there it was, a letter from Cordelia herself dated 6 months before Ezra died, accusing him of harassment, threatening consequences. Ezra's reply was penciled in the margin like a curse. You built your palace on stolen land. Bills always come due. The next morning I drove through Millbrook Estates with my camera like a man on a mission. And let me tell you something, rich neighborhoods cut corners too. They just hide it behind pretty facades and political connections. I started documenting everything. Tesla charging stations that looked unpermitted, pools too close to property lines, fence heights over county limits, driveway extensions past setbacks, lighting bright enough to guide aircraft. Cordelia's house was the crown jewel perfect landscaping circular driveway, and there it was, her sleek charging station, sitting pretty like a code violation, gift-wrapped in arrogance. I went home and printed complaint after complaint, 127 documented issues with photos, measurements, and code citations. If they wanted to weaponize inspections, fine. I knew how that game worked too. Dale came back 3 days later looking like he'd been chewing broken glass. Mr. Blackwood, he said, about these complaints you filed. I leaned against my porch rail and smiled slow. Just being a good citizen, Dale, making sure everyone follows the same rules. He tried to talk about historical complexity, about grandfather clauses and previous approvals, and I cut him off. Funny how those clauses only protect people who golf with county commissioners. He swallowed hard and finally went for it. What if we could find some middle ground? Reduce your violations. Work out a compromise. I could feel it, the trap, the HOA classic. Work with us and we'll make your problem go away. Extortion dressed up in a blazer. I tilted my head. What kind of compromise? Dale suddenly discovered that most of my violations were paperwork mix-ups. The septic had approvals from 1987. The electrical work was mostly compliant. The $47,000 evaporated into $1,200. Like magic. And I would have enjoyed that victory more if Cordelia didn't immediately prove she was incapable of learning. She came back in her white Tesla with a lawyer, this time Brennan Sheffield, midnight blue Mercedes legal papers like surrender terms. Cordelia wore some designer outdoors outfit like she thought the woods were a theme park. The perfume hit me from 20 feet away, and she didn't bother greeting me like a human. Mr. Blackwood, she said, we need to discuss your illegal interference with essential community infrastructure. I blinked. My what? Sheffield unfolded papers. Our investigation reveals you've been tampering with the main water line serving our community. I almost spit coffee. I haven't touched your damn water line. Cordelia's eyes narrowed. That line crosses your property without authorization, she said, like she was accusing me of a crime for existing. We're prepared to offer compensation. $500, one-time payment for a permanent easement. $500 for unlimited access through my land. The audacity was so thick I could have used it as mortar. I leaned forward. And if I decline your generous offer, Sheffield delivered his intimidation speech about legal action and the county taking water disruption seriously. Then they drove off like they'd just done me a favor. The second they were gone, I went hunting. An hour of tramping through my woods revealed a fat 6-inch main pipe slicing straight through my property, like an interstate highway marked with cheerful blue flags. And there on my side of the line was a concrete block maintenance building with industrial locks, expensive equipment living inside. I drove straight to the courthouse and dug through dusty permit files until my fingers were black with old paper. The story was right there in bureaucratic ink permits from 1991, contractor notes, warning about ownership confusion during some township computer modernization records being digitized, boundaries getting lost, and the contractor proceeding because the township told them the land appears to be public domain during transition. In other words, Millbrook's entire water system was built during a window when nobody was watching the deed records closely. Timing. Beautiful, stupid timing. Back home, I installed a digital flow meter at their junction box. Amazing what you can buy online, and the numbers made my jaw clench. 34,000 gallons a day flowing through unauthorized pipes like my land was a free utility corridor. That's when I remembered what an old-timer taught me years ago. Property ownership includes subsurface rights, water minerals, everything under your soil. If someone runs pipes through your land without permission, they're not just trespassing, they're stealing. I did the math with a calm that surprised me. Commercial easement rates, back payments, access fees, compound interest. And suddenly Cordelia's little $500 offer looked like a joke told at a funeral. $192,000 in back payments, $500 a month going forward. I called Sheffield. He answered like he expected me to beg. "Mr. Sheffield Sawyer Blackwood," I said. "I've reconsidered that easement discussion." "Excellent," he said smug. "My clients will be pleased you're approaching this reasonably." I laughed once. "Oh, I'm being very reasonable. $192 in back payments, $500 monthly going forward." Silence. Long enough to feel satisfying. Then he tried to sputter about courts never supporting excessive demands, and I said, "Actually, property courts love documentation. I've got flow meters, permit records, 30 years of unauthorized usage. Feel lucky." He said they'd research alternatives. I said, "TikTok counselor, compound interest never sleeps." That's when the universe decided to throw me an ally I didn't know I needed. Maya Restrepo, a union electrician I'd worked with years ago, called after seeing my name bouncing around online. "Sawyer," she said, "what the hell is going on out there? Because my union's looking into wage theft tied to that fancy development, and your name keeps showing up." Wage theft. Hundreds of thousands stolen from workers who built those homes. And the more we dug, the uglier it got. Cordelia wasn't just some HOA president protecting property values. She'd been the corporate lawyer behind contracts that squeezed working people dry, and she was taking secret consulting payments from the very management company billing the HOA. Meanwhile, she launched a smear campaign against me, whispering about my divorce, calling me unstable, letting rumors spread like poison through diners and Facebook groups. Dangerous element, she called me in their newsletter, never saying my name, just painting a picture of a deranged hermit in the woods. For a day it worked. I'd walk into town and conversations would shift. People would watch me like I might bite, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't hit me. I felt that old shame creeping in that old voice saying, "See, you're the problem. You always were." I sat on my porch one night staring at my dark window reflection thinking, maybe I should just sell this land to them, take whatever crumbs disappear. My hands actually shook. Not because I was scared of Cordelia, but because I was tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of always being the guy who loses. Then Maya showed up in dusty union coveralls with a six-pack and the kind of calm only people with calluses have. We sat there watching fireflies drift through the pines while she said, "Sawyer, these people have been stealing from everybody. Landowners, workers, homeowners. They're not powerful because they're right. They're powerful because everyone's scared." And something in me snapped into place. Ezra's trunk wasn't just a pile of old papers. It was a roadmap, evidence, leverage, the kind that makes bullies sweat. We built a coalition fast. Maya's union folks, a local journalist named Marcus, who lived on black coffee and moral outrage, even a retired judge, Patricia Moreno, who took one look at the documents and practically lit up like Christmas. "Holy Mary," she breathed, flipping through filings. "I haven't seen systematic fraud this beautiful since I sent a county commissioner to federal prison in '98. She laid out strategy like she was sharpening a blade. Don't punish innocent homeowners. Target the criminal leadership. Establish ground rent. Force full disclosure. Let their greed hang them. We sent certified letters to every homeowner individually so Cordelia couldn't control the narrative. And sure enough, she panicked. My trail cams caught her Tesla creeping near my property line at 3 in the morning, headlights slicing through the woods like a searchlight. She called an emergency HOA meeting and tried to spin it into theater pacing at the front like a caged animal telling residents I was unstable, fraudulent, predatory. But the room didn't bend the way she expected. People had questions. Real questions. A retired teacher stood up and said, "Cordelia, these documents show deeds from 1872 and continuous tax payments. What exactly makes his claim fraudulent?" A plumber who'd helped build half those houses stood and said, "Why does our water system cross his land without an easement?" Then the HOA treasurer Diane dropped the bomb. Cordelia couldn't outrun. Sterling Communities has been overcharging our HOA by roughly $180,000 a year. Services we thought cost $1,200 actually cost $600, and I found undisclosed consulting payments. Cordelia's face went tight and she snapped, "You people don't understand the complexities of community management," and someone cut her off loud. "Ma'am, that's called embezzlement where I come from." She tried to regain control, and instead she spiraled, accusing everyone of conspiracies, yelling about outside agitators, threatening lawsuits like confetti. That's when she made her fatal mistake. She tried to pressure a private investigator into fabricating dirt on Maya, and the investigator, tired of being treated like her personal weapon, called Marcus and recorded everything. Witness tampering. Obstruction. The kind of thing that doesn't end with a stern HOA email, it ends with handcuffs. The final showdown wasn't in my cabin or her community center. It was in the township meeting room, packed beyond capacity, cameras everywhere. Channel 6 live trucks outside the air, thick with nervous sweat and the kind of electricity you feel before a storm breaks. Cordelia swept in late in a navy suit flanked by lawyers with faces like granite, and she tried to take control with a polished PowerPoint about protecting the American dream. She showed pictures of smiling families, property value charts, and carefully framed shots of my cabin that made it look like a crime scene. She dabbed fake tears and said, "These poor residents bought in good faith, and now they're being terrorized by someone with a documented history of financial instability and mental health issues." And for half a second that old shame tried to crawl up my spine again, because she was saying it on a microphone in public the way rich people weaponize your worst year, like it's evidence you deserve to be crushed. Then Judge Moreno stood up slowly in the front row, and the room quieted like someone turned off a machine. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. For the record, she said, holding up the deed like it was a verdict, "Mr. Blackwood owns this land legally, completely, and indisputably. The only remaining question is whether this community chooses reasonable negotiation or court-ordered resolution." Cordelia's lawyers started whispering fast, and her face went pale under all that makeup. Then Diane spoke again, clear as a bell, laying out the overcharges and the secret payments. A sheriff, Daniel Rodriguez, stood from the back in uniform and said, "Ma'am, you just acknowledged receiving undisclosed payments from a vendor billing your community. That's textbook embezzlement." And that was it. That was the moment the spell broke. The commissioner looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Then he cleared his throat and said the words Cordelia never thought she'd hear in her life. "In light of the documented evidence presented tonight, the county acknowledges Mr. Blackwood's legitimate property ownership claim. Financial irregularities involving the HOA will be referred to appropriate authorities." The room erupted not in cheers, more like a release, like 100 people exhaling at once after months of being lied to. Cordelia didn't handle it like a professional. She didn't handle it like a leader. She handled it like a cornered animal. She screamed about corruption, called everyone traitors, knocked over a trash can on her way out. Heels skidding on the floor as cameras captured every second of her meltdown live. And before she even reached the door, the residents voted right there in public to remove her as HOA president, effective immediately. She turned back like she wanted to curse them all, but the room had already moved on without her, like she was yesterday's noise. She stormed out into the flash of cameras, and for the first time since my divorce, since my life cracked open, I felt something simple and steady settle into my chest. I wasn't powerless anymore. Bullies only win when you mistake their confidence for ownership.